$63 billion in assets. That was the number on Enron's books the day it filed for bankruptcy, the largest corporate collapse in American history at the time. Most people think Enron was a story about a few crooked executives cooking the numbers in secret, a conspiracy hidden in a back room, something the world couldn't have seen coming. But the fraud wasn't hidden. It was printed, audited, and filed with the federal government, in plain sight, quarter after quarter, for years. What follows is how a company convinced the smartest people in finance to look directly at the lie and call it genius. The accounting trick the SEC approved. The Star Wars entities named after a man's own children. The whistleblower who wrote it all down. And the recorded phone calls where traders laughed about a grandmother in the dark. It started with permission. In 1992, Enron's Jeff Skilling personally lobbied the SEC for something called mark-to-market accounting. Enron became the first non-financial company ever granted it. Under this method, Enron could sign a deal today and book all of its estimated future profits immediately, as if the cash had already arrived. A gas pipeline deal signed on Monday could show $400 million in profit by Tuesday. And if the pipeline never worked, Enron was under no obligation to revise the number down. The profits were real on paper. They were never real in the bank. And that was the entire game. The problem with imaginary profits is that the losses are real. So Enron needed somewhere to put them. CFO Andy Fastow built 4 off-balance sheet entities to absorb the debt. He named them after Star Wars: Jedi, Chuko, LJM Cayman, LJM2. The name LJM stood for Leah, Jeffrey, Matthew, his wife, and his 2 sons. Fastow was hiding Enron's losses inside partnerships named after his own children, and he personally collected $30 million for managing them. Money paid to him by Enron itself. A man was being paid tens of millions to hide his employer's debt in structures named after his family. And it got worse when you looked at how they were funded. The entities were capitalized partly with Enron's own stock. This was the fatal flaw. These structures were supposed to protect Enron from losses, but they were backed by Enron shares. So the moment Enron's stock fell, the entities lost the very thing that gave them value. At the exact moment they were needed most. The company had hedged its risk against itself. It was insurance that evaporated the instant a fire started. The hedge protected nothing, and still nobody stopped it, because technically Enron disclosed all of it. The related party transactions were sitting right there in the footnotes of the audited annual reports, but the language was deliberately impenetrable. Analyst after analyst read those footnotes, admitted they couldn't understand them, and moved on anyway. Nobody wanted to be the one who didn't get it. So they assumed the genius was real. Fortune magazine named Enron America's most innovative company 6 years in a row, while the fraud was actively in progress. The disclosure existed. It was just written so no one could read it, and the people paid to read it had reasons to look away. That's because Enron's auditor was also its consultant. In fiscal year 2000, Arthur Andersen earned $52 million from Enron, $25 million to audit the books, $27 million in consulting fees. Andersen was being paid more to advise Enron than to check its honesty, which meant the firm auditing the lie had a financial reason to keep it going. When the SEC investigation was announced, Andersen employees shredded Enron documents for 10 straight days before a legal hold order arrived. The firm was convicted of obstruction of justice and collapsed. 85,000 jobs gone. Years later, the Supreme Court unanimously overturned that conviction. It didn't matter. The firm was already dead. The watchdog had become an accomplice, but one person inside Enron did try to stop it. Her name was Sharon Watkins. In August 2001, the Enron vice president sent a 7-page memo to Chairman Ken Lay. Her words, "I am incredibly nervous that we will implode in a wave of accounting scandals." Lay's response was almost elegant in its cynicism. He hired Vinson & Elkins, Enron's own outside law firm, the firm that had helped structure some of the very deals in question, to investigate. Within weeks, they concluded there were no significant problems. Watkins wasn't fired, but her computer was searched, and her files were quietly copied. She saw the collapse coming and named it exactly. The company investigated her instead of the fraud, and by then, the world had already seen what Enron was capable of. Because months earlier, the mask had slipped in California. During the energy crisis of 2000 and 2001, Enron traders manipulated electricity prices with strategies they gave names: Death Star, Fat Boy, Get Shorty, Ricochet. Recorded phone calls captured them laughing about cutting power to Grandma Millie and stealing $1 million a day from the state of California. Prices spiked 800%. Rolling blackouts hit hospitals, and Enron booked the profits. With a smile on tape, they joked about the lights going out, and soon enough, the lights went out on them, but not before they turned on their own people. Enron's stock peaked at $90.75 in August 2000. Thousands of employees held that stock inside their 401k retirement plans. In the final months before bankruptcy, during a plan administrator transition, those employees were barred from selling, locked out, frozen, forced to watch. During that same lockout, Enron executives sold $1.1 billion of their own shares. By December 2, 2001, bankruptcy day, the stock was worth 26 cents. Employees lost $1.2 billion in pension savings. 20,000 people lost their jobs. The people at the top got out with $1 billion. The people who trusted them got 26 cents. $63 billion in assets, and almost none of it was real. It was estimated profits booked as cash, debt hidden in partnerships named after a man's sons, and a hedge that was backed by the company's own collapsing stock. Here's what happened to the men who built it. Ken Lay was convicted of fraud and conspiracy, then died of a heart attack before sentencing. Jeff Skilling served 14 years and walked out in 2019. In 2021, he announced plans for a new oil and gas company, focused, in his words, on making a lot of money. Andy Fasto served 6 years. In 2020, he started giving paid talks on corporate governance. The fraud was never really hidden. It was disclosed, audited, celebrated, and rewarded. Everyone who could have stopped it looked straight at it and decided the story was too good to question. That's the part that should keep you up at night. Not that they hid $60 billion, but that they didn't have to. If this is the kind of story you can't quite believe, subscribe and stick around. We've got a whole catalog of them. And yeah, that's real.